200 hours, Philippine Sea, patrolling the outer perimeter of the exclusion zone. The ocean churns under the weight of a violent monsoon. Rain lashes against the steel hull of the heavy destroyer USS Vengeance like gravel thrown by a giant hand. 30-foot swells crash over the bow, burying the forward gun turret in foaming white water before receding into the black abyss. Inside the Combat Information Center, the low hum of cooling fans battles the groan of the ship fighting the storm. Blue light bathes the faces of sonar operators as they stare at green cascades of data. The air smells of ozone, damp wool, and stale coffee. A sensor operator leans forward, narrowing his eyes. He taps the thick glass of his console. A ghost appears in the static. It is not a wave clutter, it is solid. It moves against the current. The contact separates into 3 distinct jagged lines. They run silent, running lights extinguished, knifing through the international boundary at attack speed. The tactical officer grabs the direct line to the bridge. The captain grips the steel railing of the command deck. He orders the starboard searchlights to sweep the darkness. Beams of million candle power light stab through the driving rain. They illuminate the sleek, angular gray shapes of 3 enemy stealth corvettes. The intruders react instantly to the exposure. The lead corvette rotates its forward turret. A muzzle flash blinds the night. A high explosive shell screams across the water and slams into the destroyer's superstructure. Steel shrieks as the impact tears a jagged hole in the radar mast. Sparks shower down onto the wet deck like deadly fireworks. The 9,000-ton ship shudders violently, throwing the bridge crew to the non-skid floor. Glass shatters, spraying across the navigation consoles. The captain roars the order to engage. The destroyer's forward 5-inch gun swings with mechanical precision. It belches fire. The recoil rocks the entire vessel. The shell arcs through the storm and smashes into the lead corvette. The kinetic energy crushes the enemy bridge. The explosion rips the bow apart. Metal plates fly into the night, twisting and burning. Secondary explosions erupt as the corvette's ammunition magazine ignites. A pillar of orange flame defies the rain, turning the ocean surface into a cauldron of burning oil. The 2 remaining corvettes break formation, banking hard to port and starboard. They accelerate. Hatches slide open on their decks. Anti-ship missiles ignite and roar from their tubes, trailing white smoke as they skim the wave tops. "Vampire, vampire!" the tactical officer screams into the comms. The destroyer's phalanx close-in weapon system spins up. The rotary cannon emits a deafening buzzsaw roar. A stream of tungsten rounds creates a wall of lead in the sky. The first missile disintegrates, exploding prematurely in a shower of shrapnel. The second missile weaves, dodging the tracers. It strikes the water just 10 yards from the hull. The underwater shockwave lifts the destroyer's stern. Water geysers hundreds of feet into the air, crashing down onto the flight deck with crushing weight. Damage control teams scramble through tilting corridors. Red emergency lights strobe against the gray bulkheads. In the galley, a sailor is hurled against a bulkhead, blood streaming from a deep gash on his forehead. Steam pipes burst in the engine room, spraying scalding vapor into the passageways. Men shout orders over the roar of the fire suppression systems. The hull groans under the stress. The burning wreck of the first corvette begins to slide beneath the waves, hissing as the ocean swallows the fire. The remaining 2 enemy ships disappear behind a wall of rain and smoke, racing full throttle toward the strategic island. The destroyer lists 5 degrees to port. The captain grabs the handset to alert the fleet. The surprise is over. The war has begun. 245 hours, forward airbase Talon, 100 miles from the naval clash. The storm that battered the fleet now lashes the concrete tarmac. Rain sheets sideways, pushed by gale force winds. Yellow floodlights struggle to pierce the deluge. Ground crews in heavy slickers sprint under the wings of parked fighter jets. The air vibrates with the high-pitched whine of turbofan engines spooling up to full power. The smell of raw jet fuel hangs thick and heavy, mixing with the scent of wet asphalt and burnt rubber. The scramble klaxon cuts through the storm, a mournful rhythmic wail. Pilots in G-suits sprint from the ready room. They vault up the ladders. Canopies slam shut, sealing out the noise of the storm. Marshals wave glowing batons frantically. Afterburners ignite. Twin cones of blue fire shoot from the exhaust nozzles, instantly vaporizing the rain behind them. The jets release their brakes. They tear down the runway, tires kicking up massive rooster tails of water. The lead fighter jet rotates, lifts its nose, and punches through the heavy cloud layer. It leaves the turbulence behind, emerging into clear, moonlit starlight at 30,000 feet. The radar warning receiver screams immediately. The sky ahead is not empty. A swarm of black triangular attack drones dives from the upper atmosphere. Behind them, heavy enemy interceptors streak in, their wings loaded with munitions. The flight leader locks a target. Fox 2. The Sidewinder missile drops from the rail, ignites, and screams toward the lead drone. The impact is instantaneous. The drone disintegrates into a cloud of burning composite shards. The explosion illuminates the cockpit of the wingman. The enemy returns fire. Tracers from the interceptor's cannons arc through the night like angry fireflies. A stream of 30mm rounds shears the wingtip off the third friendly jet. Fuel sprays into the slipstream and ignites. The jet rolls violently to the right, spinning out of control. The pilot pulls the ejection handle. The canopy blows off. The rocket seat shoots him into the freezing air just seconds before his aircraft explodes in a blinding fireball. The remaining fighter jets break formation. They engage the enemy interceptors in a swirling knife fight. The G-forces crush the pilots into their seats. Oxygen masks clamp tight against their faces as they labor to breathe. One friendly pilot pulls back hard on the stick, forcing his nose up. He climbs vertically, stalling his airspeed to force the enemy to overshoot. The enemy interceptor zooms past, exposing its engine exhaust. The friendly pilot levels out and fires his cannon. The rounds rip through the enemy's fuselage. The engine turbine shatters. The enemy plane enters a flat spin, tumbling toward the cloud deck below. "Bandits flanking left," the flight leader yells over the radio. He dumps flares. Bright magnesium balls burn hot, confusing the sensors of an incoming heat-seeking missile. The missile swerves, detonating harmlessly in the empty air. The shockwave rattles the leader's cockpit glass. Below, the burning wreckage of the downed aircraft falls through the clouds. It crashes into the jungle canopy of the island, starting a fire that glows dull red through the mist. The sky remains full of twisting metal and contrails. The first wave is intercepted, but the radar shows more contacts inbound. Endless contacts. 5:30 hours. Coastal Defense Sector 4. The storm recedes, leaving a cold gray dawn. Mist clings to the coils of razor wire lining the dunes. Inside reinforced bunkers, artillery crews wipe condensation from their sights. The ocean heaves, gray and angry, crashing against the anti-landing obstacles planted in the shallows. The air is damp and still. A spotter on the cliff edge freezes. He sees the horizon ignite. A ripple of orange flashes lights up the distant enemy-held atoll. Seconds later, a sound like tearing canvas fills the air. It grows louder, deepening into a terrifying roar. The sky above the water fills with smoke trails. The first volley arrives. It does not land, it crashes. The beach explodes. Enemy rockets plow into the wet sand and detonate. Shrapnel sprays across the dunes like deadly confetti. A reinforced bunker takes a direct hit. The concrete roof crumbles instantly. The heavy machine gun inside twists into scrap metal. The impact hurls the crew against the back wall. Another rocket slams into the ammunition depot behind the trench line. The explosion is deafening. A fireball mushrooms 200 feet into the air. It sucks the oxygen from the trenches. Soldiers are knocked flat by the overpressure. Dirt and debris rain down, burying men to their waists. A parked transport truck flips over from the force of the blast, its tires spinning in the empty air. The battery commander racks the bolt of his radio. He screams coordinates into the handset. Behind the ridge, friendly heavy artillery pieces adjust their aim. The hydraulic whir of the turrets cuts through the chaos. The steel breeches slam shut. The guns roar. 155-meter shells scream back toward the sea. They leave smoke trails crossing the incoming enemy rockets, forming a deadly grid pattern in the sky. The friendly shells impact the distant atoll. Plumes of water and rock shoot up on the horizon. On the beach, the shelling intensifies. A crater opens up beneath a communications antenna, toppling the steel tower. It crashes onto a supply tent, crushing the crates inside. A soldier sprints across the open ground, carrying a crate of mortar rounds. A shell lands 10 yards away. The shockwave lifts him off his feet. He hits the ground hard, rolling into a crater. He checks his limbs. He grabs the crate. He keeps moving. The ground shakes rhythmically as the duel continues. The air smells of sulfur and pulverized rock. The entire coastline burns. 700 hours, Beachhead Sector Alpha. The sun struggles to pierce the wall of thick, oily smoke that chokes the shoreline. The tide is high, the waves gray and violent, churning with the debris of the morning bombardment. Inside the scorched remnants of the cliffside bunkers, defenders check their ammunition belts. The air is hot and acrid, tasting of spent gunpowder and salt spray. The ground vibrates. It is a low, rhythmic thrumming that grows louder with every passing second. The smoke swirls. A massive, flat-bottomed shadow breaks through the haze. Then another. A dozen gray hulks materialize from the gloom, engines roaring as they cut through the surf. The lead landing craft surges forward. It grinds onto the sandbar with a screech of tearing metal. The heavy steel ramp drops with a deafening clang. "Contact front!" a sergeant screams. The heavy machine gun in the primary bunker opens fire. The barrel glows red-hot. A stream of high-caliber rounds rips into the open maw of the landing craft. The first row of enemy soldiers disintegrates. Bullets punch through body armor and helmets. Bodies jerk violently and collapse, piling up on the wet steel ramp. The water around the landing craft turns crimson instantly, but the wave does not stop. Behind the wall of fallen bodies, an enemy battle tank roars to life. Its treads grip the ramp. It crushes the corpses of its own infantry as it rolls onto the beach. The tank's turret rotates with mechanical swiftness. The main cannon fires. The impact is catastrophic. The shell strikes the primary bunker's firing slit. The concrete structure shatters. A cloud of pulverized rock and dust erupts, burying the machine gun crew. The firing stops. More landing craft slam onto the beach. Hundreds of enemy infantry pour onto the sand. They sprint in a crouch, diving behind tank traps and craters. Mortar rounds begin to fall among the dunes. Sand geysers into the air. A defender rises from a trench to fire his assault rifle. A sniper bullet strikes his neck. He drops without a sound. An enemy soldier reaches the base of the trench line. He pulls the pin on a fragmentation grenade and lobs it over the sandbags. It lands at the feet of a defending fire team. Grenade! The explosion rips the trench wall apart. Wooden support beams splinter. Dirt buries the squad. One soldier stumbles out of the dust, his face covered in blood, firing his pistol blindly. An enemy bayonet lunges from the smoke. It pierces his chest. He falls back into the mud. The enemy battle tank crests the first dune. Its tracks chew through the razor wire. It depresses its coaxial machine gun and sprays the retreating defenders. The platoon commander grabs his radio handset. He screams for the reserve demolition team to blow the cliff face. He throws a green smoke canister to mark the fallback position. The demolition charges detonate. The cliff face shears off. Tons of rock slide down, crushing 2 enemy armored vehicles and sealing the access road. But the beach is lost. The enemy flag rises over the smoking ruins of the first bunker. 09:15 hours, deep jungle, Sector 7. The triple canopy rainforest traps the morning heat like a sauna. Steam rises from the rotting vegetation on the forest floor. Mosquitoes swarm around the face paint of the special ops team. They lie prone in the black mud, buried beneath layers of ferns and camouflage netting. The air is heavy and still, smelling of wet moss and decay. High above, the sun pierces the leaves in thin, laser-like shafts. The puddle of water inches from the team leader's nose begins to ripple. A low mechanical growl disturbs the silence. It grows into a roar. The ground vibrates. Exhaust fumes drift through the vines, overpowering the scent of the earth. An enemy armored column tears through the narrow logging road. The lead armored vehicle crushes saplings under its massive rubber tires, pushing aside the jungle with brute force. Infantry ride on top, scanning the tree line with bored intensity. The team leader waits until the lead vehicle crosses the kill zone marker. He squeezes the detonator clacker. A wall of directional mines detonates instantly. Thousands of steel ball bearings shred the jungle foliage. They rip through the unarmored cab of the lead truck. The windshield vaporizes. The driver and gunner are killed instantly, slumped over the controls. The vehicle swerves violently, crashing into a massive mahogany tree. The impact crumples the steel frame like aluminum foil. Men riding on the back are hurled into the thorn bushes. Open fire! The jungle erupts. The Special Ops team unleashes a torrent of suppressed automatic fire from the ridgeline. Bullets punch through the canvas sides of the troop transports. Enemy soldiers scramble to dismount, falling as rounds strike their chest plates and helmets. A rocket launcher operator on the ridge stands up. He fires. The rocket streaks down the slope and slams into the second vehicle's fuel tank. The explosion engulfs the road in a wave of napalm-like fire. Burning fuel sprays onto the panicked infantry. Men scream as the flames consume their uniforms, rolling in the mud in a futile attempt to extinguish the fire. The enemy attempts to regroup. The turret on the rear armored vehicle swings toward the ambush point. The heavy autocannon tears into the jungle. It mows down trees as if they were grass. Wood splinters and leaves explode into the air, raining down on the Special Ops team. Large branches crash down, pinning a comms operator to the ground. The team leader signals the flank. A heavy weapons specialist shifts position, moving to the blind side of the enemy vehicle. He aligns his sights on the turret ring. He fires an armor-piercing grenade. The projectile strikes the gap between the turret and the hull. The explosion shears the turret off. It flips into the air, landing upside down in the mud with a wet thud. The enemy fire slackens. The remaining soldiers retreat behind the burning wreckage of their convoy. The jungle floor is strewn with broken glass, spent casings, and bodies. The ambush is complete. 1100 hours, deep water trench 40 miles offshore. Eternal darkness presses against the black steel hull. The water pressure at 600 feet is crushing. Inside the nuclear attack submarine, the silence is absolute. Crewmen move in socks on the linoleum decks to dampen vibration. The air is recycled, cool, and tastes faintly of ozone and machinery. The only sound is the rhythmic, faint pulse of the reactor coolant pumps circulating through the vessel's heart. The sonar waterfall display shifts. A jagged red line cuts through the background static. The operator presses his headset cups tight against his ears. He distinguishes the rhythmic cavitation of heavy twin screws. It is not biological, it is the enemy carrier strike group. Flood tubes 1 through 4, the captain whispers. The command echoes in the cramped control room. Compressed air hisses violently. The outer doors slide open. Shoot! The submarine shudders 4 times. 4 heavy torpedoes eject from the bow. Their counter-rotating propellers spin up to attack speed. They scream through the black water at 50 knots, trailing copper guidance wires. Above, the ocean surface erupts in panic. The enemy destroyer escorts turn hard, their rudders groaning against the strain. They drop acoustic decoys, loud noisemakers that fizz and pop in the water to confuse the sensors. The lead torpedo ignores the bait. It locks onto the magnetic signature of the nearest enemy frigate. The impact is devastating. The warhead detonates amidships 20 feet below the waterline. The explosion creates a massive gas bubble that lifts the 4,000-ton ship physically out of the water. The steel keel snaps like a dry twig. The ship falls back into the sea, broken in 2. Millions of gallons of water rush into the engine room, drowning the turbines instantly. Steam explosions rip through the smokestacks. Splash 1, the sonar operator confirms. Retaliation is immediate. Enemy helicopters hover overhead, dropping cylindrical depth charges. They splash into the water and sink rapidly. Dive! Emergency deep! The submarine tilts sharply to a 30-degree down angle. The deck drops away. The crew grabs railings and consoles to stay upright. The first depth charge detonates. The shockwave hammers the submarine. Light bulbs shatter, plunging the room into darkness. Emergency red lights flicker on. Dust and paint chips fall from the overhead pipes. The steel hull groans and compresses, screaming under the pressure. A pipe in the torpedo room bursts, spraying high-pressure seawater. Damage control teams rush to clamp the leak. The submarine slips beneath the thermal layer, disappearing into the acoustic shadow just as a second explosion churns the water above. 13:30 hours, Blue Water Operations Area, 200 miles east of the island. The midday sun beats down on the expansive flight deck of the Allied carrier. Heat waves shimmer off the black non-skid surface, distorting the air around the parked fighter jets. The ocean is a flat metallic blue sheet, stretching endlessly in all directions. On the escorting destroyers, radar panels hum with high-voltage energy, sweeping the curvature of the Earth. The fleet moves in a tight defensive formation, carving white wakes through the calm water. The long-range threat board in the Combat Direction Center turns solid red. The horizon flickers. It is not heat lightning. It is the exhaust plumes of a saturation attack. A swarm of enemy cruise missiles crests the horizon, skimming 50 feet above the waves at supersonic speeds. Vampires inbound, bearing 090. The vertical launch system, VLS, hatches on the escort ships fly open. Compressed gas ejects the canisters. Solid rocket motors ignite with a blinding flash. Dozens of interceptor missiles roar out of their tubes, trailing thick pillars of white smoke. They accelerate upward, banking hard to meet the incoming threat. The sky transforms into a chaotic web of crisscrossing smoke trails. Interceptors collide with the enemy missiles miles out. Fireballs bloom and fade in the clear sky like camera flashes. Debris rains down into the sea, but the swarm is too thick. 4 enemy missiles punch through the outer defensive screen. They drop lower, weaving erratically to confuse targeting computers. They close the distance in seconds. The carrier's defensive perimeter activates. The 30mm close-in weapon systems, CIWS, spin up. The barrels blur. A deafening, continuous buzzsaw roar drowns out the wind. Tracers form a solid wall of tungsten lead. The first incoming missile flies into the stream. It disintegrates instantly, the warhead detonating harmlessly in a shower of sparks over the water. The second missile jinks. It avoids the tracers. It slams into the hull of a screening frigate, just aft of the bridge. The impact is catastrophic. The warhead penetrates the thin steel plating before detonating inside the superstructure. The blast vents upward, ripping the smokestack apart. A massive fireball engulfs the midsection of the ship. The shockwave shatters the windows on the bridge. Sailors on the deck are hurled into the air like ragdolls, landing hard on the steel grating. Burning aviation fuel pours from ruptured lines, cascading over the side and igniting the ocean surface. On the carrier bridge, the admiral watches the frigate list heavily to starboard. He grabs the tactical handset. He orders the counterstrike. On the flight deck below, steam catapults fire. Loaded fighter jets shoot off the bow every 30 seconds, fully armed with anti-ship harpoons. They bank away from the burning escort, turning toward the enemy fleet coordinates. The air war has turned into a slugfest. 1600 hours, Capital City Port District. The afternoon sun casts long, jagged shadows across the cratered asphalt. The city is a skeletal maze of shattered glass and crumbling concrete. Dust motes dance in the shafts of light, piercing through bombed-out roofs. Silence hangs heavy in the alleyways, broken only by the crunch of boots on broken masonry. The air tastes of pulverized drywall, sewage, and unwashed bodies. A heavy metal grate rattles. The ground trembles. The nose of an Allied battle tank smashes through a brick garden wall, entering the main avenue. Its turret sweeps left, then right. The turbine engine whines, a high-pitched scream that bounces off the canyon of buildings. Infantry squads move in its wake, hugging the walls, weapons raised. A glint of light flashes from a third-story hotel window. Contact left, high! The tank reacts instantly. The main gun fires. The concussion blows out the windows of the surrounding shops. The shell slams into the hotel room. The wall explodes outward. Concrete blocks and furniture rain down onto the street. A cloud of gray dust engulfs the intersection. Enemy soldiers erupt from the rubble of a storefront. They fire rocket-propelled grenades. One rocket streaks across the street and impacts the tank's side skirt. The reactive armor tiles detonate. The explosion deflects the molten copper jet, saving the crew. The tank slews violently, crushing a parked car flat. Its coaxial machine gun opens up. The stream of bullets shreds the storefront, turning the wooden facade into splinters. The infantry squad stacks up on a heavy oak door. The breacher pumps his shotgun. He fires into the hinges. Wood shatters. He kicks the door in. Flash out! He tosses a stun grenade. A blinding flash and a deafening bang rock the lobby. The squad floods the room. Laser sights cut through the smoke. An enemy combatant rises from behind a reception desk, raising a submachine gun. Two Allied soldiers fire simultaneously. The rounds strike the enemy's chest plate. The force throws him backward into the mail slots. He slides down the wall, leaving a smear of bright red blood. Fighting spreads to the stairwell. The noise is deafening in the confined space. Grenades bounce down the concrete steps. They explode, sending shrapnel pinging off the steel railings. Men scream. A soldier takes a hit to the shoulder. He falls back, his weapon clattering to the floor. The medic grabs his drag handle. He hauls the wounded man behind a marble pillar, ripping open a trauma packet. On the street, the tank advances. It runs over a barricade of burning tires. The heat warps the air. A sniper shot rings out. It sparks off the tank commander's hatch. The commander drops inside and buttons up. The tank fires a canister round, a giant shotgun shell, down the alley. Hundreds of tungsten balls scour the narrow passage, clearing everything in their path. The sector falls silent again, save for the moans of the wounded and the crackle of fires. The street is secured. 1845 hours, forward operating base Keystone, northern perimeter. The sun dips below the jungle horizon, casting the battlefield in a bruised purple twilight. Smoke from burning vehicles hangs low, trapping the heat and the smell of death close to the ground. Inside the sandbagged command post, the radio operator's hands shake as he changes frequencies. The air screams with the snap of supersonic bullets passing inches overhead. Outside, the roar of battle is no longer distant. It is right on top of the wire. A wave of enemy infantry surges from the tree line, numbering in the hundreds. They scramble over the bodies of the fallen, bayonets fixed, ignoring the claymore mines detonating in their path. The perimeter heavy machine gun clicks dry. The barrel smokes, glowing cherry red. The gunner draws his pistol. He fires 3 times before a grenade lands in the pit. The explosion silences the position. The wire snaps under the weight of the assault. Enemy soldiers pour into the trench line like water breaking a dam. An Allied defender swings his entrenching tool, the metal blade striking an attacker's helmet with a sickening crack. He is overwhelmed, tackled by 3 men. Knives flash in the gloom. The base commander looks at the tactical map. The red markers are inside the blue lines. He grabs the heavy radio handset. He does not ask for reinforcements. He screams the code word. Broken arrow, I repeat, broken arrow, coordinates, my position, danger close. 30,000 feet above, the bomb bay doors of a heavy strategic bomber cycle open. The aircraft shudders as it releases its payload. Bombs away. Gravity takes over. A dozen 2,000-pound precision munitions whistle as they fall. The sound builds from a whisper to a terrifying shriek that drowns out the gunfire below. Soldiers on both sides freeze, looking up at the darkening sky. The ground liquidates. A chain of massive explosions walks right up to the sandbags of the command post. The blast wave flattens the command tent, snapping the aluminum poles like dry twigs. Dirt, jagged metal, and bodies are hurled hundreds of feet into the air. The overpressure ruptures eardrums and shatters the reinforced glass of the nearby watchtower. The heat is intense enough to blister skin instantly. A wall of fire rolls over the enemy advance, vaporizing the jungle foliage and consuming everything in its path. The earth heaves one last time, then settles. Silence returns, replaced by a high-pitched ringing in the survivor's ears. The commander pushes a pile of sandbags off his chest. He coughs up black soot. He crawls to the edge of the parapet and looks over. The enemy wave is gone. In its place is a smoking, blackened crater 50 yards wide. Nothing moves in the kill zone. 2100 hours, enemy rear supply lines, Sector Zulu. The moon is hidden behind thick banks of drifting smoke. Floodlights bathe the sprawling fuel depot in a harsh artificial glare. Heavy transport trucks idle in long rows, their engines rumbling as drivers rush to load ammunition crates. The air is thick with the chemical stench of refined petroleum, exhaust fumes, and wet mud. Sentries walk the perimeter fence, cigarettes glowing in the dark, confident in their distance from the front lines. A forklift driver shouts instructions to a loading crew, his voice echoing off the metal shipping containers. A low thumping sound mixes with the wind. It rhythmically chops the air, growing faster and louder. A sentry stops, lowering his rifle to look up past the glare of the lights. The darkness above the tree line seems to shift. 3 attack helicopters rise simultaneously over the ridge. Their menacing silhouettes block out the stars. The nose-mounted chain guns spin up instantly. Muzzle flashes strobe like lightning. 30mm high explosive rounds impact the row of fuel tanker trucks. The steel tanks rupture immediately. High-octane fuel sprays out under pressure and ignites. A massive fireball rolls across the asphalt, engulfing the drivers before they can run. The heat melts the tires of the adjacent vehicles, fusing the rubber to the road. The helicopters dip their noses, accelerating into the attack run. The pilots trigger their rocket pods. Salvos of unguided rockets streak downward, trailing gray smoke. They slam into the ammunition bunkers. The concrete roofs lift off. Shockwaves flatten the chain-link perimeter fence. Secondary explosions ripple through the depot. Boxes of artillery shells cook off, sending tracers spinning wildly into the night sky like erratic fireworks. A steel watchtower collapses, its legs buckled by the intense heat. An enemy anti-aircraft truck parked near the command tent spins its turret. The gunner frantically tracks the lead helicopter. He fires a stream of green tracers. The rounds zip past the helicopter's canopy. "Brake right!" The pilot yanks the collective. The helicopter banks hard, its rotors biting the air. Flares shoot from the tail boom, burning bright magnesium white to distract the targeting radar. The tracers miss, cutting harmlessly through the smoke. The wingman helicopter engages the threat. A laser-guided missile drops from the rail. It glides silently for a second before the motor kicks in. It strikes the anti-aircraft truck. The vehicle vanishes in a cloud of shrapnel and black smoke. The lead helicopter performs a final strafing run. The gunner targets the generator block. The rounds tear through the machinery. Sparks shower the ground. The floodlights die, plunging the burning depot into chaotic flickering shadows. The fuel reserves needed for the enemy offensive are gone. The helicopters regroup in the darkness, their navigation lights extinguished, fading back into the jungle shadows. 23:30 hours, Highway 1, the choke point leading to the coast. The moon is gone, obscured by the black smoke of the earlier raid. The only light comes from the dying embers of the fuel depot miles away. Allied battle tanks sit hull down behind earthen berms, invisible in the darkness. Their turbine engines idle with a low predatory rumble. Inside the turrets, gunners stare into glowing green and white thermal screens. The air is cold, but the steel of the tanks radiates heat. A vibration travels through the ground. It rattles the spare track links bolted to the hull. On the thermal display, white blobs crest the distant ridge. They are not animals, they are enemy armor. They are moving fast, engines screaming at redline. It is a suicide run. The enemy column accelerates, firing blindly into the darkness to clear a path. Target front. Fire. The Allied line erupts. The main gun recoil rocks the 70-ton lead tank violently. A sabot round, a dense metal dart, leaves the barrel at Mach 5. It bridges the gap instantly. It strikes the lead enemy battle tank. There is no explosion yet. A shower of bright sparks sprays into the night as the dart punches through the thick steel turret face. Physics takes over. The kinetic energy compresses the air inside the enemy tank to the temperature of the sun. The ammunition storage ignites. The turret, weighing 15 tons, is blown 50 feet into the air. It lands upside down, crushing a retreating jeep. The headless hull continues to roll forward for 10 yards before grinding to a halt, burning furiously. The enemy tries to flank. They swerve off the road, tearing through the guardrails. They run straight into the minefield. A massive explosion rips the track off the second enemy tank. The vehicle spins wildly, exposing its thin rear armor. An Allied infantry fighting vehicle pours 25mm cannon fire into the engine block. The rounds pierce the grille. The engine catches fire. Enemy infantry dismount from crippled personnel carriers. They sprint through the smoke, firing assault rifles at the unseen iron monsters blocking their path. The Allied tank commander traverses his coaxial machine gun. He presses the butterfly trigger. A stream of tracer rounds cuts through the smoke. The bullets mow down the charging infantry in rhythmic bursts. Bodies drop into the wet ditch. A surviving enemy tank breaks through the smoke, closing to within 50 yards. It lowers its gun. The Allied tank driver slams the transmission into reverse. The tank jerks backward. The enemy shell grazes the sloped armor, ricocheting into the night sky with a banshee scream. The Allied gunner adjusts his aim. He fires a high-explosive anti-tank round at point-blank range. The enemy tank disintegrates. The momentum breaks. The road is a graveyard of burning steel. The fires from the wrecks illuminate the carnage. The breakout has failed. 600 hours, Day 2, Sector Alpha Beachhead. The sun rises blood red through a haze of lingering smoke. The roar of artillery is gone, replaced by the crackle of cooling metal and the rhythmic lap of the tide against the shore. The beach is a graveyard of twisted steel. The charred husks of landing craft sit rusting in the surf, dark silhouettes against the morning light. The sand is blackened, churned into a mixture of ash, oil, and spent brass casings. A medevac helicopter descends. Its rotors chop the heavy air, kicking up a cloud of gray soot. The landing skids touch down on a cleared patch of asphalt. Dust covers the red cross painted on the fuselage. Corpsmen move through the wreckage. They do not run. They walk with heavy, deliberate steps. They carry litters between the craters. A medic kneels beside a fallen soldier. He presses 2 fingers to the neck. He waits. He shakes his head. He reaches into his vest, pulls out a black marker, and writes the time on a plastic tag. He ties it to the soldier's boot. He moves to the next body. On the main highway, an armored recovery vehicle growls to life. Its heavy steel blade lowers. It pushes the burnt wreckage of an enemy tank off the road. The metal screams as it scrapes against the pavement, tumbling down the embankment into the ditch. The road must be cleared for the supply trucks. A squad of weary infantrymen sits on the seawall. Their uniforms are stiff with dried mud and salt. They strip down their weapons, wiping carbon from the bolts with oily rags. One soldier strikes a match against his helmet. He lights a cigarette. He exhales a long plume of blue smoke, staring out at the horizon. Out at sea, the fleet remains. The gray shapes of the destroyers and carriers patrol the skyline, scars visible on their hulls. A small boat maneuvers alongside the flagship, fishing a pilot's helmet out of the water. An EOD, Explosive Ordnance Disposal Team, shouts a warning. Fire in the hole! A controlled detonation erupts near the bunker line. A Dud artillery shell vaporizes in a puff of black smoke. The sound echoes flatly across the valley. No one flinches. The birds have not returned yet. The island is secure. The fighting is done.